A bid to invoke special LegCo powers to probe TV license controversy fails. Scientists conclude Arafat was poisoned to death. And a battle over who are the rightful owners of artwork seized by the Nazis.
Good evening. A bid by mostly pan-democratic lawmakers to invoke special LegCo powers to look into the free-to-air TV license controversy was voted down today. A motion aimed at forcing the government to explain why it refused to grant a license to Hong Kong television network failed by a margin of 3 votes in the functional constituencies. Vicky Kung reports.
There was never a question that directly elected legislators were in favor of invoking the LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance to get the government to explain why HKTV was denied a license. LegCo members who held the undecided votes were the targets of lobbying this morning. They failed to persuade the insurance sector representative Chan Kin-po.
And if invoking the powers will be able to resolve this problem, then I would have no hesitation in supporting it. But then I don't think it's a solution to the problem. In fact, with regard to the decision by the administration, I think the best way to deal with any discontent would be to go for a judicial review.
Tony Tse was also not convinced.
The ExCo, in discussing the issue of free TV licenses, have to consider various documents, and the documents may contain sensitive information and confidential commercial information. By invoking the LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance and require the ExCo to disclose the documents that would affect the parties concerned.
When the lobbying efforts looked set to fail, the pan-democrats accused the government of using ExCo's collective responsibility as an excuse for not explaining why HKTV was denied a license. But it was also a no vote from the sports, arts, culture and publication sector legislator, Ma Feng-kwok. He believes that using special LegCo powers to force an answer out of the government will do little to find the truth behind the decisions. The government warned that such a move would hurt ExCo's collective responsibility system.
It's just like baking cakes. Different cakes have to undergo different processes, and the requirements are different. The same happens to TV licenses. In the vetting process, we have to follow the law, the procedures, and the policies.
The final vote, 33 for and 30 against, with 6 abstentions. Charles Mok, who moved the Powers and Privileges motion, criticized Paul Tse for withdrawing his support at the last minute and abstaining from voting.
Those people who are his voters, I think those people should be the most disappointed, because if he had such an intention, he should have come out and told everybody, rather than, in a way, I would even use the word deceived all these people until the very last minute.
Mok then spoke to a disappointed crowd outside the building. Most of them are HKTV staff members who lost their jobs because the company was unable to get a license. It is not the end of the road, he told them, because a LegCo committee meeting tomorrow will continue to probe the issue. HKTV chairman Ricky Wong is expected to speak then, and they urged the crowd to return to keep up the pressure on the government. Some of the people outside the Legislative Council have been here for a few days. The crowd tends to swell towards evening as more people join in after work. Although the government issued a statement earlier to explain that ExCo's confidentiality must stay just that, the protesters here don't look like they're leaving anytime soon. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
A farm in Guangdong province, which supplies poultry to Hong Kong, is close to the home of a child who was diagnosed with H7N9 avian flu. But Hong Kong and mainland authorities have not reached a consensus on whether to suspend the supply of live birds in view of the current outbreak. Jenny Lam reports.
Secretary for Food and Health, Ko Wing-man, was in Shenzhen today to exchange views on animal and plant quarantine, health quarantine and food safety with officials from Guangdong, Shenzhen, Zhuhai and Macau. In his speech, he said recent cases of H7N9 avian flu show that the risk of an outbreak still looms. A farm near the home of a Dongguan boy who was diagnosed with the disease continues to supply live poultry to Hong Kong. But under current guidelines, the supply of poultry from within a 13-kilometre radius will be suspended only if the birds themselves are found to be carrying the virus. Ko Wing-man said although Hong Kong had suggested that the same rules should apply to human cases, the two sides have yet to reach a consensus on this. The main reason, he explained, is that none of the birds in the Dongguan area has been found to have the virus so far. While it may be deduced that the poultry are carriers if people are falling ill, there is no hard evidence of that yet. He said Hong Kong and the mainland are in close contact on food supply and there are specific risk management measures. Hong Kong inspectors will soon visit farms supplying poultry to the territory to make sure they're safe. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
For years, the family of former Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat have been pushing for an investigation into his mysterious death back in 2004. As it turns out, their hunch that he was poisoned to death was right. This as a team of scientists detected a radioactive substance in Arafat's remains. What killed Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat is no longer a mystery. After a team of Swiss scientists exhumed and tested Arafat's body, they determined his death was a consequence of poisoning with the radioactive substance polonium-210. Forensic tests reveal Arafat's ribs and pelvis contained the deadly radioactive isotope 18 times higher than normal. Findings that have enraged and devastated Arafat's widow.
I was in a shock. I felt the anger, shock and anger and huge sadness.
She agrees with forensics experts. Someone in her husband's entourage poisoned him.
Yes, of course, this must have been put in his tea or in his coffee or in his water, and somebody who was near him must have given him his this.
It was in 2004 when Arafat fell mysteriously ill in his Israeli-besieged West Bank compound. He was flown to a hospital in France but died shortly after, and no autopsy was ordered. Suha Arafat suspects the Israeli occupation assassinated him because they considered Arafat a terrorist and an obstacle to peace.
Answer lies in the Muqata, where my late husband has spent his last 3 years under siege.
But Israel insists it had nothing to do with his death. While Palestinian officials call for an investigation, this forensic expert says now they have evidence.
If I was a judge and jury, this is absolutely stone cold certain. This is beyond any doubt, in my opinion, that it was polonium that caused the death of Yasser Arafat.
While Arafat's family consider this a mystery solved, they do hope this stone-cold evidence proves foul play was, in fact, what led to the former Palestinian leader's demise.
The embattled mayor of the Canadian city of Toronto returned to work Wednesday, one day after he admitted he'd smoked crack cocaine. Ignoring the advice of his city council allies that he should take a leave of absence, Rob Ford showed up for work as usual. After months of evading the question, Ford admitted Tuesday he smoked crack probably a year ago when he was, quote, in a drunken stupor, but he's refused to step aside. Outside City Hall, hundreds of people protesting and were demanding his resignation, but Ford hasn't been charged by police, so there's no legal path for critics to force him out. Adding to the mayor's woes, his longtime policy advisor resigned following Ford's admission. The tug of war is on for Houlay's claim to some recently discovered works of art that were plundered by the Nazis in World War II. The German government announced earlier this week that customs investigators seized works valued at $1.3 billion in a Munich home.
The 1,450 artworks seized include paintings by masters such as Henri Matisse, Marc Chagall, and Pablo Picasso. They were found in the Munich home of Cornelius Gurlitt, the reclusive octogenarian son of German art dealer Hildebrand Gurlitt. He was one of the men Adolf Hitler put in charge of selling so-called degenerate art. The Nazis plundered hundreds of thousands of artworks from museums and individuals across Europe. The legal question now is, who gets to keep it? Julian Ratcliffe is with Art Loss Register, a London-based company that specializes in retrieving lost and stolen art for the rightful owners.
Some of the items of the 1,450 will be readily recognizable, and they'll be able to contact the victims easily. And those should be returned. But there'll be some where they cannot find the victim, so that's a real problem. And those cases will probably then be given to a museum or held in trust in case.
Ratcliffe adds that the man who had the paintings, Cornelius Gurlitt, could also make the case that he's the rightful owner.
This man may argue that he or his father bought them in good faith and they're really his, and he'll have to prove that.
Some argue that the German government has the authority and moral obligation to return the art to the original owners or their heirs. One of those laying claim to some of the art is American Michael Hutton, whose great-uncle was Alfred Flechtheim, a Jewish-German art patron who died impoverished in 1937.
They should publish a list and certainly look in if there are any with the provenance and the previous ownership of my great-uncle Alfred Flechtheim. And if there are, then hopefully they'll do the right thing.
A German government spokesman said Berlin is now pushing for the publication of works suspected of being obtained by forced removal through Nazi persecution. But the issues will likely take years to resolve. Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast, people sentenced for tampering with gas meters, Hong Kong's biggest ever dinosaur display, and the Olympic torch blasts into space ahead of the Sochi Winter Games.